Hey, what's up? Rob here again, and in this video I'm going to take you through the GroovePages Editor Menu so that you can get in, style your pages and make them look nice. So let's dive in and take a look. Okay, so we're inside of the GroovePages Builder again, and this time I'm going to take you through the Editor Menu, which is the one that pops up on the right hand side. So when you click on any of your elements on your page, the editor menu will pop out on the right hand side as it does here. And depending on what you click on, you get different options. So I clicked on some text here. So you can see I've just got the main design elements here that I can change. Now just going through this menu quickly, just from top to bottom, show you what's what. States is like for a button or anything like that. That's how it interacts with your cursor. So like when you hover over a button, when a button is active or when your focus is on a button, that is how you can style it accordingly. So say for example this button here, when I hover over nothing's happening, I can click on the button, I can click on hover, and when hover is active, I'm affecting how it will look when I hover over it. I can click on the background color, click on this color window here, and if I wanted to make it blue, I can just click on there and that will make it blue when I hover over it. Now if you look now, when I click over here and I hover, see the button goes blue. Now if you want to know what these styles are, you can look it up. These are standard, hover, active and focus are standard terms when it comes to buttons, and they do different things depending on whether you are operating on a computer with a mouse and a cursor, or whether you're actually on a mobile device. Now you've got this other one underneath here, next one down is reset styles. Now this is really important. So if you bring something in, let's say I bring some text in, let's just bring in a paragraph of text, just pop it down here, and I'm just going to style it. I'm going to give it a size, I'm going to make it a font and a color, something like that. Let's say I've done all of that. I don't really like it and I want to go back to a different, I don't want to have to go and undo everything. I can literally click on this trash can here and it resets it to the state it would have been when it was first dragged onto the page. And that applies to anything. If you've used a pre-designed block like this one here, and if I don't like this text, I can reset it, and that is reset to its standard iteration. So you can obviously undo anything like that as well. You can go back and I can undo to before I even brought that in if I like. There we go, and that's gone. So then as you go down, so all of these things in terms of the menu are for design, affecting the design. So transparency, say if I've got this image and I want it to be transparent, I can slide that up there. Global styles are quite useful if you are creating a site with different pages, or you're using a style of text across your website, or a style of anything. Actually, you can create a global style. So say I like this style here of this text. Let's just change the font to something that we can see that stands out. Let's make it red, for instance. Now say I like that style and I'm going to want to use that other pages on the site. I can just go into global style, create a new style, give it a name. I'll just call it red font. Click the tick, and that's now a style in my GroovePages account. So say I want this text to be that style, I just click on it, go to global style, my red font style has appeared, I click it, and there we go, and that's adjusted. So I can do that wherever I want throughout this site. I can just go global style, and there we go. Okay, so that's what that does. I'm just going to undo that again just so that we go back so that it's not getting too messed up. There we go. Right, next up, we've got text. Now that's all your formatting of text. So you've got your fonts here, These are all the standard fonts within Groove. Font sizes as well, you just use this slider to change font size. Just be aware that when you've got all these devices highlighted here in pink, you're changing the font size across all devices. So just remember your toggle here if you want to change on just one device. Now everything within this little text window here applies to text, and when you have got something other than the default setting that you're using, you'll see a little green dot applied up here next to the label of what it is. So you can see if I collapse that, I've got settings applied to the text, to the spacing, and to the size on this element. Now if I click on something else, those dots might change. So I've got a border on this one, something on the layout, spacing, and size. So you can see at a glance anything that's non-standard that's applied, and then you can just go in and have a look at what's set up on those just by clicking wherever that dot is. And see this has got a size applied to it there. Okay, so within the text, anything that you edit in the text box here that expands will affect the text that you've highlighted. So you've got, depending on what font you've got, let's just pick one here, you get different options of weight, and they get bolder as they go higher, or you can just go for regular. Font color is in here. Now you can pick any of these colors here that are sort of already preset. If you want to use a hex code, you just click on this circle here. You can enter your code in here, click the tick, and that will change the color. Or you can also just drag, and you can see this text up here is changing according to this slider. So you can, if you just want to pick a color, you can do so, or if you've got an actual hex code, you can put that in as well. Now, when you've got a color set, you can also choose the transparency of that color with this slider here. 10 is fully transparent, 0 is no transparency at all, and that's all within this color block here. Okay, so some people get confused with this. Some people are looking in the background window here, which has a similar color setting. You just need to make sure that you're in the right one for what you're editing. So if you're editing text, make sure you're in the text color setting, choose your color, click the tick, then you can close this down and they get out of your way. Text alignment is fairly straightforward. Letter spacing is the spacing between the letters, so you can tighten it up. You can have it wide, let's see they're spaced out, or you can just have it normal. And if you have it just on letter spacing, that is just the default. So then you've got your 3 settings. Line height is similar. If you've got no setting on there, you can see it's just standard line height. If I tighten it up, that's considered as tight, that's considered as normal, and loose is going to really open it out. And this changes depending on the font you've got selected as well. Some will be tighter than others, some will be looser than others. Okay, so that's text. Okay, the next one up is background. Now if I click on this block here that's got a background applied to it, you'll see I've got this little green dot, so it's got a background to it. You'll see it's an image of a coffee cup. You can just see it through there, and it's got a color of blue. Now if I change this color, let's say I make it green, see it changes the background, and I can also change, this has got a transparency on it, on the color. So the more transparent I make the color, the more the image shows through. See if I go all the way up, there's no color at all. If I wanted this to be, say, that color, I can just click and I can adjust accordingly. If I want something a little bit more sort of grayscale, I can do that as well. And I can choose how much of the color masks the image. If I want to change the image, I can click on choose image. Let's just say I want to put this image in there. I can click select, and you see I've got a new image in there now. And then you can choose how you want this to react. These are all standard web terms, and they change how the image reacts to the box that it's inside. So cover, it will cover the box. Contain means it will show you all of the image, and it's set on repeat, so you can see it's starting to repeat here. If I set that to no repeat, then you see it just shows the background color. It won't show anything else at the edge. If I set it to auto, it will do what it thinks it needs to fill this box. I can do cover. I can choose to center it. I can start from the right hand side, the left hand side, top corner, whatever I want to do. And I can also click this parallax button, which will let the image stay in place as I scroll on the page, which is quite a cool effect as well if you want to use that. Now you've also got the option to use a video background. So if you switch that on, you do need to click and just make sure you're selected on video background here at the bottom left. Now you can go in and configure, and you can choose where you want your video to come from. So whether you want a YouTube video, Groove video, you can choose the format, whether to loop it, whether to mute it, all of that sort of stuff. And then when you click update, that will change. Okay, let's just undo that. So that's background. Border. Now this applies to the, obviously as it says, the border around something. So if we look at, let's just find something that's going to demonstrate this. Let's look at this box here. Okay, at the moment it's got no border, and you can see there's nothing to the right of the border here. If I go on here, if I wanted this to have rounded corners, that is effectively a border. I can choose a value, and you can see, if I click away, you see it clearer. This has now got rounded corners. If I wanted it to have a solid border, I can click on this here. I can choose where I want the border to be. So let's say I want it on all four sides, and this works in a similar way to if you've used Excel or something like that. You've got at the top of the item you selected, at the bottom, to the left or to the right, or all the way around. You can choose a width. So let's pick 6 pixels so you can see it. You can see it's put a border there. And now I can choose my color of my border. Let's say I want it bright red. Doesn't look very nice, but just to make it stand out. And you then get this color pop up. You can then choose to put your hex codes in the same way you would when you use that color anywhere else inside GroovePages. So that's how you add borders. You can also choose whether they're dashed, dotted. If you don't want the border at all, you can switch it off. It's all pretty straightforward. So that is border. Now animation, that is in terms of when you come onto a page, it's how things reveal themselves. So let's say this image here, when let's just say we want it to flash, when let's just say on a delay, let's give a delay of 2 seconds. So when the page opens after 2 seconds, that animation will take place. So let's just preview this and see what happens. And we count 2 seconds, 1, 2, and then the animation plays. So that can be useful if you want to draw attention to something. It's not something I use a lot, to be honest. You've got different types. You've got on reveal, on hover, and on delay. I use delay there, but you can play around with different options. And you've got all these different types of animation as well. But I would say don't use too many because it can look a little bit tacky if you're not careful. The next one is delay. Now, if you don't want something to show for a certain amount of time, so if you want to come onto your page, you want someone to read something, and then they get the chance to maybe use a button, you can set a delay on that of, let's say, 5 seconds, for example here. Now when I preview this page, we'll count to 5 when the page loads. That gives us time to read this. Then you can have the option to press the button. So let's have a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the button appears. So that's if you want someone to take note of something and really absorb something before being able to move on to the next step. You can use that feature if you wish. Again, not something I use a lot, but it can be useful, if you used it in the right way. Okay, on to the next one. Layout is the next one. So let's just show you what we do with that. Let's get the menu up again. Now, the way to use the layout option, you need to be on a container. So let's look at this block we've got here. if I go to this container here, let's just have a look. That container that's holding this text. If I go to layout, you'll see this is set to have a vertical layout, so everything's going top to bottom, and then it's all left aligned. Now if I want to have a horizontal layout, I'll just click there, and you'll see it's completely changed the layout. Instead of being top to bottom, it goes left to right. Obviously it doesn't look very nice, but depending on what you're putting in your containers, it can work. And then you can also choose whether everything is aligned towards the top of the container, to the middle, or the bottom. Obviously that's not doing anything at the moment. If I just show you, let's just make this a little bit bigger, just to show you exactly what I mean. So this is at the top of the container. This container is what I've got selected here. This is centered within the container. This is at the bottom of the container. This is stretched to be from top to bottom, and it evens out the space in between. And this is distributed centrally within the container, spacing everything out accordingly. So they can obviously work in different ways when your content is displayed, depending on how much content you've got in a container, so on and so forth. Then you've also got your secondary alignments here. So this is all left aligned at the moment. You may want it center aligned, you may want it right aligned, or you may want it justified. Now the reason it's not changing the justification of this text is because that is a text element on its own within there. So to center that text, I would need to click on the text and I would need to center it there, like so. You can see how now that has changed the layout of the container. So layout only works when you have a container selected. So if I were here on this 2-column layout, if I go into here, I can't get into all of those layout settings. All I can do is show how it displays, whether it displays or if it doesn't display at all. Now, if you were going to use that, you may want to, say you've got a block that you don't want to display on your mobile devices. Say I didn't want this bonus stack to appear on mobile devices, for instance. I could click this entire block, switch this off, go to mobile. I've got my block selected, and I could change layout display to none, and then now that's not going to show when I get onto a mobile device, but when I'm on a desktop device or smaller, it will show. When I'm on a mobile device, it won't show at all. So this block will completely be missing, and it will only show the next block underneath it, which is this one. So that can be useful if you want to control elements and columns and things like that. You might have one layout for the bigger devices and a completely different layout for the others. You can hide one layout on the mobile devices, so you can control exactly what is shown on each page. And I've got another video on my channel which goes into mobile optimization in detail, and I've helped hundreds of people with that inside of Groove. It's something people have a lot of problems with, but when you get your head around it, it's not very difficult at all once you understand how it works. So that's layout. Let's just go to the next one, which is spacing. Now, spacing is probably the most important one of all. Now, spacing comes in two sections, in two parts. You have, if you look at this this layout here, it kind of shows you, if you can get your head around it in graphical form, you've got margin. You see it says margin down here, is anything outside of what you have clicked on. So it's the space outside of the thing you've clicked on. Padding is anything within the element you've clicked on. So let me demonstrate. If we come to these again here, now let's make this background a different color, just to really demonstrate clearly. I'm just going to make that, let's just make that green. Okay, and then I'm going to make this white. Okay, so that's going to show it a little bit clearer now. If I want to add more space, say that I want to add more space at the top and at the bottom of this so I can see my green border around it, I can highlight the top margin and the bottom margin. So if you imagine this dark line here is the thing you have selected, and as I slide this slider up, it's going to add more space at the top and at the bottom. If I want to add more space on the right hand side, I can click on the right hand side. I can switch those off if I want to, and I can do that independently. Now this is aligned up to the side, so it's not actually going to work in this example. If I just change the size to auto, that will now let me do that. So as I bring that in, that adjusts the margin accordingly, so I can completely control my layout. Let's just make it the same as those so they're even. Now let's say I want more space around the inside of this, so let's turn that off. Now I can see here that all 4 of these have got padding of 2 inside. Okay, if I took that down, you can see no padding means it's right up to the edge. So if you think of padding as an internal margin and margin as the external margin, you should get it pretty well if you think of it that way. Now if I want to add more space around the inside of this item I've selected, so I want to give more space between the edge of the white border and between the text inside, I'll just make sure I've got all 4 selected, and I just slide that up. If I wanted more space at the top and bottom, I can switch off the sides and I can just increase that, and it changes accordingly. So that's spacing. And really important, you might want to use different spacing on different devices. So I might want to change the spacing on a mobile to look different. So let's say I wanted to have more space either side. I could change that on there, and I could bring the margin down so that everything matches up. I might want more margin there so I see more of my green background on a mobile. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward once you get the hang of it. Just think of external margin, internal is padding. So you've only got the 2 settings, and you can choose to toggle which ones you use. Just click them. If they're highlighted, they'll work on the slider, and if they're not, they won't. You have this make negative option as well. So if you wanted to give something negative spacing, let's say, actually let's undo that. Let's say if I wanted to bring this block up, I select the container, the layout I should say, and I want to bring this up, I can use the top margin, so the space outside of it. I can make it negative, and what that will do, it will move it in reverse. So if I slide this up now, it's going to take it up. So you can actually get things to overlap if you need to. So not something I would advise you play around with unless you know what you're doing. But don't forget, you've always got the reset styles if you need it, if you get into trouble. And the other way to get your spacing toggle is you can click on, with your item selected, you can click on this little icon here, and it gives you a pop-up spacing window that you can use if you prefer to use it on the fly there. I mean, personally, I'm used to using it down here in the main menu, but entirely up to you. It's there if you need it, and you can move it around using these 6 dots. Okay, so that's spacing. The next one is size. Now, this is another one people get in trouble with sometimes. You just need to really understand how to use it. So if I click on one of these, because these were preset, this is set as relative to parent on the width. So you've got width and height. You've got these 2 options, okay? So width, relative to the parent. Now, the parent of this container is this 2-column layout, which is this here. So it's made up of 2 columns. So when this container is set to be 100% of its width of its parent is this right-hand column. Now, if I change this width here, you'll see it comes down. So say I want this to be 50% of the width. See, that's now half the width of this column. Now, if you want it to be automatic, auto, that will fill the column. Obviously, you see it didn't change anything, but where that actually comes into play is if you're using spacing, say I wanted to put a right hand margin in there, and I'm putting a margin in, it's not going to change because this is set to fill the width of that column. Now if I set this to auto, now my margin is changing because it's not set to make that container the full width of that column. Very subtle difference, but you know, it does make a difference. So you've got these 3 different settings, or 4 settings. You've got auto, which is generally the safest one to use. Okay, you've got a fixed width in pixels, so that's good if you're using images. You might want an image to display larger on a desktop device at a certain width, and you may want to reduce it down, and that's fixed, so that's not going to change. So say if I click on this image here and I click on size, that's set to a fixed width of 300 pixels, and on this device here it's also 300 pixels, but I might decide that on a desktop device I want those images to be, let's say, 450 pixels, or let's say 500 pixels, like that, but I might want it to be 300 pixels on here. I can do that. I can just go in and change the size, and then that won't change as the page size changes. It will always be 500 pixels until it drops down to the next one where I've changed it. So that's fixed width. Relative to the page is similar to relative to parent, but it's obviously, it says relative to the page. So you can then choose, if I do it here, let's say I bring it to something like that, and then as the page gets narrower, actually let's change it, make sure I'm doing it on all devices so that it's consistent. As the page gets smaller, so does the image, you see. And now that's in relative to the page, because the page is now wider because the columns have stacked, it's letting the image display larger. Same with the mobile device. So it's really a case of thinking, what do you need to control, and how do you need to control it? So if you need more control, you want something to be precise, use fixed width. If you're trying to control spacing and margin, auto is often the one to use, because some of these others override some of those options, as you could see with this. Again, I'll just show you when I'm trying to change the margin there. That's changing because I've got it set to auto. If I've got it on relative to parent, it doesn't matter how much I change this this margin, it's not going to affect it. If I set it on auto, then that is letting me control it. Okay, so that's sizing. That works the same on everything, whether it's you just need to make sure you're selecting the element you want to control. So in this case, I'm using this container. If I wanted to make this this layout smaller, I can change the size of it there. I could have that to be a fixed pixel width. For instance, I might have it that size on that device, and I might choose to change it on a mobile device to be much narrower, something like that. And you can see it will hold those changes from whatever I change them to. Okay, now after size, next one is shading, and this is fairly simple. It's just whether or not it puts a shadow on. So if I just change this background to a, let's just do a yellow, just to make it clear what it does. If I click on shading, and if I click on, let's say, a medium shadow, I don't know if that's going to show it very well against the yellow, you can just see there's a shadow around the box. Let me pick a larger one so you can see. Let's do XL. You should see that a little bit better. You can see the shadow around there. If I turn it off, remember to click on the element you're changing, which is this one here. If I change it to none, you'll see the shadow disappear, and that's gone. and you've got the option of doing inner emboss as well. It depends, what you want to do and how you want to do it. You can see that's got this sort of embossed effect. You can't see it very clearly with white against yellow, but that's what shading does. And again, if you've got something applied, it has the little green dot next to it. So let's just take that back to its default, which is there. And the last one is custom attributes. Now, this is if you want to do any custom CSS or anything like that. You can name the attribute that you're applying the CSS to, and you can put any custom CSS in there as well. So that's the main design menu. Now, there is another level to this, in that when you click on something that can be configured, such as an image, I touched on it in the interface video, you get this configure menu. So for an image, click configure. You can choose your image. So let's pick, for example, this one. Select, and then when you update, it replaces that image. There we go. And then you can put in an alt tag. You just type it in. Let's just say, let's call it free ebook update, and that now puts the alt tag associated to that image. And you can also link images as well. If you want to link to a certain page or a block on the page or a URL, pop up, or to your Groove blog or Groove cart, you can do that in there. So that's how you configure anything that has an extra layer of control to it. So same with a button. You click a button. I touched on this earlier. If you click configure, you can put the text that's going to appear in the button. So let's put get it now. I can type. Let's put that in there. Update, and that will change the text inside the button. And you can then choose what that links to. So whether it's a page, if it's a page, you'll see pages in your site here. You just click and select it. Update, and off it goes. So that's buttons. And the other things that can be configured, things like countdown timers. Now, when you're clicking on these, you need to make sure you are selecting the countdown itself. So we're in here. It's better to be on the top level of the countdown timer. It will still give you it anyway, but I just prefer to make sure I've got this whole thing selected. Now, you've got different types. You've got fixed, daily, or from landing. Now, that's when the counter starts working. So a fixed countdown doesn't matter when they land on a page. Daily, it counts down, on that day. And from landing is from when they first land on the site. So you're giving someone 24 hours to take up an offer or something like that. That's when the countdown will start, from when they first landed on your site. You can set when the countdown works till. You click on that, you get a calendar, you set that in there, choose your time zone, and you can choose what it does when the counter runs out. So, whether it goes to another page, or whether it goes to a URL, or you can add another 24 hours if you need to. And then any of these configure options, always click update once you've done, and for the updates to take effect. Otherwise, what will happen is if you just go and change these here, then you move on to the next thing. None of those changes will have taken place because you didn't click update. So always remember to do that. And then other things you can configure when you've got a form. And I've got another video that goes through this in detail. You can configure what a button does. And when a button is within a form, you see it's inside a form submit. It's a form submit button. You can choose what it does, whether it resets or submits the form. When you select the form itself, so here we've got the form container, you can choose what that actually does. So in this case, it's going to join up with an integration, and you can choose what integration you want to use. So you can use webhooks, email autoresponders, all sorts of stuff. Whatever your integrations are that you've set up inside a Groove, you can tell the form what to do with it and how to connect with it. And again, with anything, click the update button once you're done. Now these are icons. So again, they can be configured. So let's just say we want a check mark. We'll pick that one, update. and that's put our check mark in. And this is like a search. So let's say we want to have chat, and then we can have that update. There we go. And then we can choose if these are clicked on, they can be clickable as well, whether it goes to a page, a block, a URL, pop up, so on and so forth. So that's that one. And there are, anything you find that can be configured like this, these devices can be configured with an image. You've got different styles of device. You can choose what image goes in there. And then you've got things like again, these are icons, which you can just search and choose what they're going to do. Buttons. Maps. So Google Maps. That's a Google Maps element. If you can see down here in the bottom left. I can put in, let's just say, for instance, since I'm in the UK, Tower of London. And that's now coming up on the map, and that is what will show on your website. Now you can put your business there or area you cover, whatever it is. Always remember to hit update. And that's about it. And you've got things you can have your, if you've got your social media icons, you can change if you want to link it to your Facebook. You can just put your Facebook URL in there. Very easy to use. So that is pretty much the entire editor menu. There's a lot to take in there, lots of detail. But now you've got everything you need with using the main menu. So you've got blocks and elements, and then now you can come in and design and configure your elements. You've got everything you need to make your pages as you want them to be. So get stuck in, play around, and I hope you can enjoy using the power of GroovePages. So in the next video, I'm going to take you through creating your very first website from a template inside of Groove, just so that you can get your first page in and start editing and get your first site up and running. So I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.